Hi from Peace Matters, a podcast on contemporary geopolitics and international relations. I'm Marila Huscha, researcher at the International Institute for Peace. Today we're talking about BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and more recently also other members. It is a very diverse group of countries with different interests in international politics. But what unites them is a deep dissatisfaction with the existing system of global governance. They advocate for its reform and want a stronger voice in international financial institutions. So what brings these countries together and what divides them? Does BRICS matter? And how is it perceived in the West? I'm talking about this and many other questions with Ksenia Radchenkova, postdoctoral researcher at the University of Graz, and Ingrid, Senior Research Associate at Klingendael Institute in the Netherlands. This episode is supported by the Future Fund of the Republic of Austria. We are very thankful for their cooperation. We're talking about BRICS today. It's a relatively new, I would say, organization. It exists since 2009. And originally, it consisted of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And then a little bit later, South Africa joined, and now we have like a much bigger membership since 2024, more or less. And the idea of this episode is just to shed some light on what this organization is about, right? In Europe, maybe in the West in general, we know maybe less about it, or we tend to not to take it maybe as something that important, as we have other international organizations that are established, that have been there for a while. So we thought at the IIP that maybe it would be interesting to find out a little bit more what this is about, right? So my first question to you would be, in principle, how do you perceive the purpose of BRICS, and what is the rationale behind this organization, its existence? Ingrid, maybe you can start.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let me first say I'm very happy you take up this topic because, like you say, there's not too much attention yet to what's happening within BRICS, BRICS Plus, we should say now, whereas it's quite significant what is happening there. And I guess we'll talk about that later. The establishment of BRICS is based on the common view of the members that the current international Bretton Woods institutions like IMF and World Bank are dominated by Western rich countries, and in particular United States, and that they do not serve the interest of developing countries well. Furthermore, many members share the idea that the unipolarity with the US as the main power is not good for the world, for the global order, so they seek to transform that world order, and they think that economic and political coordination between the members will help to bring about a reformed world order. So this is in short, and we can delve into topics later, this is in short my view on why this is existing, why this has come about.
It actually has very much to do with the West and with how the global governance system is organized, more or less. But I checked some statistics, and it seems that it's actually in terms of population and maybe the size of countries that this organization unites, it's a very significant part of the world. It covers 45% of the world population, and it accounts for 1/3 of the global GDP. Yeah, so on the sheer size of it, it looks like something really, really important. But then when I looked a little bit deeper into, for example, decision-making, it's a consensus-based decision-making, and then you take Russia, China, India, there are such big countries with such different interests. What are they actually doing there together? So what does BRICS do, Ksenia? What can you tell me just in a couple of simple sentences?
Well, it is quite difficult to put it very short, but to start with, it's important to note that this is not kind of organization that, like, for example, EU or United Nations. So there are no firm decisions that they have to put on the table. Basically, they have to come up every year during the annual meeting with a joint declaration, which is more like a political statement of a joint will. So it is not as firm and definitely not binding in a way, and it is an expression of the direction that all the countries that are the members of this organization would like to take. So this gives a lot of room to different directions, number one. And number two, it is also important to remember that the main goal of this cooperation is the economic cooperation, right? So the first aim is the ability of these countries to cooperate economically, and in the way they cooperate, create a counter pole to those international organizations, like it was mentioned by Ingrid, World Bank and IMF, and develop the economical direction separately, not as much dependent on the Western institutions. Moreover, when we're talking about these decisions, right, these declarations, so this is only direction. What is important than what happens during these annual meetings, it creates a room for conversation. So apart from this big meeting of the state leaders that we have every year, there are lots of side meetings where actually the representatives of banks, of different industries, of financial sectors meet separately and simply discuss what they could arrange. So this forum actually creates the possibility for these countries to cooperate. And in this way, it is not that problematic that the directions of these countries are not completely the same, because at the end they end up having bilateral conversations, right? Bilateral negotiations. And then each two countries or three countries can find local agreements or different partners which would allow them to go on with their agenda on economic level.
Yeah, so it's a lot about economic cooperation, a lot of just the forum for bilateral also ties, as I understand from your answer. And it makes no sense to me, but I would like to ask you maybe more specifically, you're experts on China and on Russia. So when we speak about these countries, what are their particular interests in this organization, Ingrid?
Well, for China, it is a very useful platform which is aligned with its own priorities, namely a platform to reform the world order. That's a big aim for China. So that's an important one. But China has steered BRICS a little bit away from solely focusing on economic collaboration to also more include political issues and even very lightly security issues, which really aligns with its own priorities. It strengthened the BRI, or you could say BRI also strengthened collaboration among BRICS. Belt and Road Initiative, collaboration among BRICS members. It aligns well with China's idea for this reformed world order, as they have included it in their new initiatives, Global Security Initiative, Global Civilization Initiative, and Global Development Initiatives. And this platform helps China promote and disseminate these views and seek support among BRICS members. So for China, it is a very important vehicle also to show to the world there are lots of countries actually seeking reform. They agree with China that the current world order is not just, not fair, there's no equality, and they say this is an alternative model where everybody is equal and there's consensus made, decision making, so every voice is heard. And although Russia played initially a big role in establishing BRICS, China now fully dominates BRICS because it's the biggest economy. It has the biggest economy within the grouping, but also all BRICS members have China as their biggest trade partners. So China wields a lot of influence. So for them, this is useful, but also economically, China wants to become self-sufficient, independent from the world, well, from international countries, especially United States. And collaboration with BRICS countries can help China in achieving that purpose.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was reading some articles also about Russia and Russia's interest, and my impression from that was that there was a bit of division that for China, BRICS was mostly about economy, and for Russia, it was mostly about politics, especially if we look at this last BRICS summit in Kazan in Russia in 2024. There was this, narrative or this, idea that we want to use it in a way to promote some sort of anti-Western narrative. I don't know if this is now more China's agenda or Russia's agenda, or that's exactly what brings them together. So, Ksenia, I wanted to ask you how you see Russia's interest in this organization. You can also reflect on how it aligns, or maybe, I don't know, conflicts with what China wants from it.
Well, from this viewpoint, this is definitely something that unites Russia and China, because this organization is built as a counter project, something to add to the world governance system as opposed to Western dominance. This is true. But as it was also mentioned by Ingrid, at the very beginning, Russia was the initiator of this cooperation. And Russia pretty much still takes pride in having this leading role. It's still mentioned quite a lot in the literature and in the discourse all around. But yes, even though at the beginning this was the initiative, later on we know that economical power and leadership was taken by China, which Russia of course knows and accepts, but still Russia takes a very sovereign position and a very proud position in this organization. Because yes, originally it was actually the political will. If we are speaking about all the first agreements, all the meetings that happened actually before 2009, right? There were meetings at 2005 and 2006. Actually it coincided very much with Russia's reorientation from Western politics towards, let's say, Eurasian politics. Because originally, after 1990s, Russia wanted to join the Great West. And taken from the speeches of President Putin and many other politicians, we see that from 2004 and especially after 2008, this direction has pivoted. And exactly BRICS was the perfect platform then to allocate this political interest of joining another group of countries now opposed to the West. Later on, we know that to this initially political and not really much directed interest, because at the very beginning there were just talks and nobody took them internationally that serious, added the economical interest. We're speaking about then first sanctions for Russia 2014 and especially after the war in Ukraine. Especially now, these economic interests are playing the major role for Russia. And if you look at the discourse, also in Kazan, of course, political interests are spoken out. But if you are looking into the working groups within the summits, a lot of attention is paid to the development of new financial system, of new payment methods, of new platforms to trade natural resources and so on. So right now, this is perhaps for Russia a really, really important economical part that is almost taking the lead. Political also remaining its importance.
Yeah.
Maybe slightly different. I'm curious how you look at it between China and Russia's position. Is that for Russia, I have the impression it is even more anti-American, like it is also for Iran, whereas China sees it more as a parallel alternative to the existing world order. Do you agree or?
Fully agree, even though this narrative changes right now because of President Trump's attitude towards Russia.
Yeah.
But yes, in the rhetoric about BRICS and generally about international relations of Russia, the anti-Western position was always coming to the fore, starting with 2014. So yes, it was primarily directed against US originally, and that was what was also moving the understanding and appreciation of this group in the society then. Somehow it works well for people because I won't dig deeper there why it is like this, but the harmonious world as it is popularly spoken about. And China is not really the primarily narrative in Russia. So we're still sticking to the position against the West. True.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then let's look maybe a little bit at other BRICS members. Yeah, among them we have also founding members India and then South Africa. They joined a little bit later, but is also an important part of it. And they are, and Brazil, of course, they have quite good relationship with Western countries, and then don't want to spoil it, right? With India, there is also cooperation and other in security terms as well. So how does this, come together? Yeah, are there some really deep conflict lines within BRICS, or the economic agenda basically trumps all those democracy/autocracy concerns? How do you see it?
So there's big diversity within the group, not only regarding the view towards the United States, but are also bilateral rivalries, for example, between China and India, who both claim to be a leader of the global south, of the developing world. Also other countries, so there is a lot of diversity, and that makes it also difficult to really make big steps in reaching concrete results from these meetings. So there are some concrete results, a new development bank, the contingent reserve arrangement, talks about an alternative method of payment. It has increased use of other local currencies a little bit. So yes, but for making big steps, this diversity and rivalries and tensions, also between new members, for example, Ethiopia and Egypt, they are not always aligned, and they, for example, don't like to see South Africa take up a member in the United Nations Security Council. That was also one of the topics discussed. So this makes it quite difficult, but nevertheless, they find each other in what we said before, the need for a reformed global world order with the voices of the global south better heard. And that is, and you explained it also already beautifully, now people are sitting at the table. They are as equal. Well, maybe in reality not always as equal, but they all sit at the table and they can participate in discussions. And if you look, and it's always difficult to say what is the consequence of what, but for example, IMF has now decided to expand their board to include voices from sub-Saharan Africa. So it may well be that this grouping and the world seeing how big it comes, and with so many countries expressing interest in joining BRICS too, that it becomes that force for a different perspective on how the world should develop.
Right. You already mentioned it right now, those institutions that were created within BRICS that basically are equivalent to the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. Yeah, there are New Development Bank and contingent reserve,
arrangement.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, my question is whether they're meant to substitute or be an alternative, or what's their purpose and how do they fare in practical terms? Do they really are they really that powerful? Are they really becoming a competition maybe to the Bretton Woods arrangement?
You go first,
I can start. Ingrid will continue. The thing is that the world system is in no way complete, and that was known already for a long time. Basically, the institutions that are now being created within BRICS is the opportunity or the chance to fill out the gaps. At least that's how it's many times positioned. So it's also falling very much in the narrative of China, that also sometimes creating new legislations, new institutions that fill in the gaps within the trade, let's say, in the region. And it remains like this in BRICS. So the bank that was New Development Bank that was created in 2015 is at the moment in no way in comparison to the World Bank. the amount of money going through it, it's still incomparable. It's very small, but it's growing, and it is an attempt to create a similar system using the same methods that are used by the major economies, let's say of G7. Because what we saw at the beginning of 2000, the world was pretty much united. The system of G7 was ruling the world, let's say, just broadly speaking, and the institutions that were governing this world were majorly situated within the US, with some affiliation in European Union, in Europe. So now the focus is to shift some of this economical power to the Asian countries, and that's what the institutions of BRICS are doing. It is still it's a very long way to grow. Even the financial platform that are being developed, the bridge, the bridge financial platform that is being created, is incapable right now of allocating all the needs. But it's under development, and it is simply a statement that these countries are also having their say in the joint economic world order, right? Politically speaking as well. What can you add, Ingrid?
Yeah.
Yes, well, what makes these, and what Ksenia said is true, the size is still very small, and if I can provide a figure, up till now, the new development bank has issued loans worth 35 billion US dollar on 99 projects. China alone has provided double the amount to only sub-Saharan Africa, just to give an idea. So let alone the World Bank, which is far bigger. But what is interesting is that New Development Bank provides these loans sometimes in local currencies, which is attractive for these countries, and there are no political strings attached. So they do not have to democratize, they do not have to develop new legislation, and that is also an issue for many developing countries. What makes collaboration with other institutions sometimes difficult or less attractive is that there are so many requirements, political requirements. Yeah. Well, the same for the reserve arrangement, the contingent reserve arrangement. It hasn't been used yet, but it can be used in case of currency crisis in countries. But it is there, and it is available for only the BRICS members. Also, when countries apply to the World Bank or IMF, they are one of many, more than 100 members, I think 119 members in the World Bank. BRICS is very small. So in that sense, although it's still in its infancy, it is growing, it is developing, and I think it is significant. It has potential.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it brings me to another question that, or another, let's say, disbalance in the international system as argued by China, Russia, and maybe some other countries, and that is the dependency on the US dollar. And there is this idea that we need to de-dollarize. You already mentioned, Ingrid, that the trade or even loans provided in different currencies, in local currencies, is one big benefit for many global South countries. But well, maybe one question would be, how realistic is it, or what would it mean when you de-dollarize for the global financial system? Is it becoming more chaotic? Is it becoming less reliable? Or are we just so used to how it is right now and just cannot imagine an alternative? Maybe that's the problem, yeah? And another question is, how does the West react? I just want to give you one little quote from President Donald Trump when it was, of course, he has to come up in this discussion. So basically when it was mentioned that BRICS wants to create, apart from this alternative payment system, they want to create also their own currency. I mean, it's also a very ambitious project. Basically, he said that those countries, if they mess up with the dollar, they will pay a 100% tariff. So does it somehow add anything to their calculations in doing that or not doing that?
Okay.
Yeah, Ksenia.
Let's start. I can start. well, 100% tariff doesn't scare anybody anymore because it's already there. It's even more. Well, first of all, if this happens, that happens very slowly because detachment from dollar is the task that is impossible to do in a blink of an eye. Otherwise, it would crash the whole world economy and nobody wants it. So on a long run, definitely it is a goal for China, Russia, and actually Eurasian countries, so Central European countries, especially under sanctions at the moment. But even if we're speaking about the heavyweights in this group, like China, full de-dollarization is never in the interest of China because it holds so much of the reserve, of American reserve. They're the second lenders from the US, and fully get rid of this is impossible. So it's a gradual process that can take up to 50 years to slowly bring this down. Especially also when we're talking then about other members like Brazil is not interested at all in de-dollarization, right? They are much closer to US and they will remain that close. Similar thing we can say about Africa, South Africa. So the countries most interested in this idea are Russia, China to a certain extent, very limitedly, and of course such countries as Iran, for example, right? So everybody who is actually being pressured right now by the sanctions of US and European Union. And to this extent, it probably really makes sense as it happens right now, trading in the local currencies, because it does not require much investment in the creation of a new currency. I think they, as far as I also understood from the rhetoric of the last summits, the great idea or the big goal for everyone is to develop digital currency, so to also diversify the money flow, let's call it this way, but it's happening very gradually. And lots of smaller countries within the region, I put Russia in this role and also India. They are definitely also very cautiously looking at the money flow because nobody wants to be dependent on China that much. So if we are looking at the trade between Russia and China, 40%, I think, if I'm not mistaken, if not more, of the whole flow between Russia and China is happening in yuan right now. So Russia is being now increasingly dependent on China, and that the same could happen with other smaller countries. So this is also
changing one dependency against another.
Exactly, against each other, because China is the elephant in the room within this group. It's really a very big trading partner and definitely the leader. So from this perspective, it is a very slow process because so many things are actually hindering its development. So if it goes, and it definitely goes, de-dollarization, it will happen just really, really gradually. This is my opinion.
Yeah, it's more like chipping away from the domination by the dollar. And the one who benefits most, one country, is China at the moment, because the use of the RMB, the Chinese currency, has risen over the past few years. But to give you an idea of how it compares, China now, or global trade for almost 5% now, the Chinese RMB is used, but US dollar still counts for, I think, around 50% of global trade, and the euro around 25% of global trade, just to give an idea. So it's still very tiny, and these countries would then need more robust financial structures. There should be more trust in their economies, which is not the case. So this is far, far away, and the same actually goes for payment systems. But nevertheless, they're working on it, and some financial experts say that, well, if the development continues, and now with people looking even more negatively at US dominance in the world, this may get traction and actually develop further. Yeah. So it's not something to just push away, but it's still in its initial stage.
Yeah. It already came up several times in the discussion that actually sanctions, basically the sanctions on Russia, basically brought these countries together to cooperate closer economically. The narrative here is, oh, we will isolate Russia and then it will cave, but it seems to work the other way around. So I would like to ask this question, I have two sub-questions to this question. So there is an economic part or economic impact of sanctions on Russia, and one of the impacts is actually that countries in BRICS cooperate closer together. But then on the political level, they still stay, committed to their initial positions, right? South Africa, for example, didn't receive President Putin for the summit because of the ICC, of the International Criminal Court, order to arrest him if he basically travels there. Yeah, so somehow there is I cannot find a different word rather than pragmatic or transactional type of relationship between those countries. They seem to separate very much the politics from the economics, and somehow they don't collide, as it sounds, but maybe they do and we just don't know about that yet. What do you think?
I believe it all depends on the level we are looking at. Yeah. So they don't collide probably in this general narrative that it is a creation of an additional platform for economic cooperation. So in this way, it definitely works for it. So for Russia, it was a perfect second platform after the trade and after cooperation and integration did not work out with Europe. It simply diverted and had another platform to develop in. The same thing can happen with all the other countries joining in. And as it was said, there are no strings attached. So it's actually in a way, it's an idea of Margaret Thatcher. So we bring economy there and the cooperation flows, right? So economical cooperation is the motor of the development of cooperation and intergovernmental relations in this way. And as long as no political agenda to change anything within the state construction of each participant country is there, everybody is willing to join. Market mechanisms work according to the international system, so all the rules are the same, loans are the same, but yes, no strings attached, so you don't need to change anything locally. Why not? So it works very much for each of the country's participants.
Ingrid, how do you see China navigating this sanction situation with Russia? How do they react, basically? What do they do?
China accepts these sanctions, and it makes sure that it works according to the sanctions, as it doesn't violate the sanctions. And yes, of course, in practice, private companies have made sure that drones or part of drones via third countries still reach Russia, but China really has been very careful in not violating these sanctions. So China wants to play according to the rules. And going back to the diversity that you just talked about, it's one of China's philosophy that you should work together where you can find common ground and leave the differences aside. That's one of the slogans China has. And it's also applying this to the BRICS countries. And apparently many countries feel comfortable. So yes, there are these diversities, but they still have so much to share. And that's even between Russia and China. They have also lots of areas where they think differently and different interests. But there's also a lot that binds them, and that's where they focus on right now.
I could add something about sanctions. It's even from my own experience. Last year I was in China. I have Russian citizenship. I couldn't open a bank account in the country because of the sanctions. It's forbidden. Yeah. And for example, the personnel working in the bank very politely came to me and said, I'm sorry, there are right now these tensions, we cannot help you. So Chinese are very precise in this, and it's actually something to respect in the way they are treating all the norms, all the international norms, sanctions included, with big respect. But yeah, as it was said, looking at Russia, in the way that BRICS offered it a platform to develop, sanctions only encouraged Russia to sustain its sovereignty, economical sovereignty, as it's being called. Yes, and it was actually very interesting to see from the very beginning how the discourse also evolved about it, because it was seen from the very beginning that the expected results were not coming, and actually the European leadership was still very persistent in continuing with sanctions. So there was a lot of maybe blind trust in the usual mechanisms of economy that were supposed to work if the world system was unified. Yeah, and maybe this is actually one of the mistakes that lots of Western countries did not take BRICS and these second platforms as seriously as they are, because exactly this kind of platforms helped Russia to diversify, change the markets, and then actually live happily ever after the sanctions were imposed.
But maybe to add to the topic of seeking common ground and diverging interests, of course, with the expansion of BRICS and maybe even further expansion in the near future, this may become more complicated. Right. And China is also concerned about its influence over, its dominance, in fact, over the BRICS. So I do foresee, let's say, less practical results because of more diverging interests among the new members also.
Yeah, just to remind all of us, so in 2024, it was Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, and then in 2025, Indonesia that joined the organization. And if we look maybe also at political systems in these countries, or maybe their, ideologies, there's also a lot of resistance towards the West. And as far as I understand, it was very much on Russia's initiative to invite all those members, and maybe to an extent to create this like-mindedness in terms of the attitude towards the West. So I'm wondering if this organization, because of also this enlargement, will become more political right now. You spoke a lot about the economy, how economic cooperation matters, but is there, do you see like any tendency to develop some sort of a joint, maybe ideology, or maybe some sort of political charter or statement, or some sort of a common perception of the world and the system of governance in the world?
No, I don't see that. And if you look at major happenings in the world, BRICS never really formulated a joint commentary on what's happening in the world, and this will become even more difficult with all the new members. So I don't see that happening anytime soon. I can imagine that what's going to get more, or what will be accelerated, is the economic collaboration.
If I may add, I fully agree. I don't think there will be any joint political statement or ideology developed, because it also actually contradicts the general idea of BRICS. The idea is to enhance multipolarity, and democratic nature of the world order, meaning there should be no one ideology. There should be many different ideologies, and perhaps creation of regional economies, regional groups that work together. Maybe they have more closer ideas with ideology, but then it already goes into political theory. And on this level, there is also a lot of similarities. There are a lot of similarities between at least Russia and China, because ideologies are evolving around civilization state idea, and in Russia it is the Eurasian idea. So the community of countries with common Eurasian center. In China, it is China, of course, as civilization, and there are many other centers, so around India, around Iran, right? So ideologically, it's all very much disintegrated, and it should remain so according to the policy, according to the main ideas of the BRICS. And also, I wanted to emphasize once again, it's not that much anti-Western. There is no common idea to just work against the West. No, that's not like this. The idea is to add up to the system, to decolonize it in a way even, because by many countries it is seen that the world as it is right now was still a united system under American influence. So the idea is to diversify it, to make it democratic, that each country can have their own ideology, can organize itself in its own way, but at the same time can freely trade with other centers. So that's the main idea, and this is something that I do think represents the interests of all the members. Not that much anti-West, but more everybody on the same level. So actually very much UN idea.
Okay.
And on top of that, reform of these institutions,
Right.
such as World Bank and IMF. Also, if you look, for example, at the voting rights, so BRICS has almost half of the world population and almost a third of GDP, world GDP. But within IMF, they only have 14%. Well, BRICS original, 14%, and now with the new constellation, 16 to 18% of the voting rights. So that's of course not
Proportionate.
No, exactly. It's not proportionate. So this reform remains. So not a toppling of the Western system, but reform of that system is also an important goal, and that's where everybody finds each other. Yeah.
So how does then the West position itself towards BRICS? Because you say it's not anti-Western, but in my understanding, it's very much perceived as such. And what does it mean? Does it need to embrace it? Does it need to compete with it? How does it change maybe its attitude in order to not to, create a new global conflict out of it? What do you say, Ingrid?
I've participated in some discussion among EU officials, EU people and experts on this. And I have the impression that at least in Europe, more and more policymakers begin to understand that they should take this seriously. Yes, it's still, not yet a full-fledged organization, and its results are still limited, but it does represent a big chunk of the world, and something needs to change. So I do find that among policymakers, this is gradually becoming a broader view instead of just dismissing it as anti-Western and irrelevant because it's still, the results are still so limited. And I think this is very hopeful because indeed some of these issues need to be addressed also at the current global institutions.
So you would also say that there is more reflection on the results of those global institutions and more reflection on or the acknowledgement that there is a need to reform.
Yes, and I think a wake-up call was the interest when it became clear that more than 34 countries were interested in joining, and actually, yes, some of them are already partner countries and some did join. So I think that was a wake-up call, that it's not just, difficult countries like Russia and China, but that it's very broadly supported, these goals.
Yeah.
It's very good to hear that because this is very much insider information, right from the European Parliament, or I don't know with whom you were talking. Thank you. This is very good for me to hear because what I found actually that there is no agenda in the EU, so there is no common position on the BRICS. So this is not developed. And if you look into the literature, just even academical literature about this topic, you can rarely find the European names in writing about it. So it's still very much the further direction of the research. So it's still quite far away. So it's good to hear that the things are changing.
I don't know how representative it was. It was informal talks about this, but at least I was positively surprised by the thinking, and I had the impression that is growing, that insight.
Yeah. Oh, this is good. This is great. And if I may ask, this is now really interesting for me. How is it perceived? Still as a threat, or as the new let's say, widening of the horizon where, for example, the European Union or European countries could just get to know more information. Because this is actually my big concern, because many times, for example, when we are speaking about the influence of Russia and China, it is perceived as a threat automatically, which is very controversial, especially for sinologists like you, because in China, the growth of another region does not necessarily mean threat. And in China, it's very much associated with the Western colonial politics, because that's what was the result of Europeanization and the colonization of the 19th century, right? So for specialists about China, it seems like very much thinking alike. If I did that, I think that somebody else will do that to me. So the question is actually, did you understand that maybe people see it in European Parliament, in the EU, more like an opportunity rather than a threat?
Well, I cannot generalize. I only spoke to a few people. No, it's definitely still more on the potential threat understanding. Like I said, it's like a wake-up call. So many countries find each other around these issues. Maybe it's time that we start paying attention also to preserve, by reforming, but to preserve our own institutions. Okay. But like I said, it was more like an expert meeting and nothing political. So I cannot speak about that.
Yeah, let me just maybe ask you one final question. We said it's there is a very big potential for BRICS, but still it's in a way nascent organization in terms of the ratio of its economic weight worldwide. It's really still small. So maybe if you think 5 to 10 years forward, what would you consider success? How would you imagine a successful BRICS or failed BRICS? What do you think it would look like?
Well, I can only speak about what I hope would happen, because developments in the world are now so uncertain. It's difficult to project what will happen. But I would hope actually that the Western world takes this development serious and starts reforming the existing institutions. So I don't think it's a good idea to end up with parallel strong institutions. I would rather hope that it helps, that BRICS and their ideas and their activities help the reform of the existing institutions.
So it gives the right push.
Give the right push. And there are some little, like I mentioned, IMF, there are some little results in that area, so let's hope this will continue.
Yeah. Ksenia, what do you think?
I would hope for the very same. And if speaking about the development that could happen within the BRICS itself, it could be only the further diversification, complementarity in economical development, meaning, for example, like China and Russia in a way are complementary. So it is probably the deeper connection between the participant countries, but not as much as creation of the parallel system. It's not that I wouldn't hope for that, but I would hope for the integration of all the international organization and institutions, yes, to create, let's say, a harmonious order that would satisfy everyone. Let's hope for that. And it's good that Europe is awakening, as well as you asked.
Very nice note to finish the discussion with. Thank you so much for this very interesting talk. I learned a lot.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure too.
This was Peace Matters. Thank you for watching and listening. Please subscribe to our channels, and until next time.